Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 27 deadline decisions. This is a weekly series where I take you through your final questions and dilemmas ahead of the upcoming deadline. If you do enjoy today's video and you get any use out of it, please do smash that like button, and if you're new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So I thought I would start the video by discussing a wildcard draft for Game Week 27, and I don't usually start these videos with wildcard drafts, but one of the reasons for that is I'm kind of slightly tempted myself. I would say I'm probably up to about 25%, maybe 30% likelihood to wildcard in 27, so still leaning towards not using it. The reason that a lot of us are looking to use it, and myself included, is due to the amount of injuries that are piling up in our team. So if you're sat there with 4 or 5 flagged players and maybe a couple of options on the bench that you don't really want to play, such as a Charlie Taylor, no insult to Charlie Taylor, of course, he's an absolute legend, but it might be a situation where you're like, I'm having to take a -4 hit just to field 11 players in 27. If on top of that, you're also not particularly happy with your team, and on top of that, you've only got 1, maybe 2 players for double Game Week 28, or let's say maybe 0, and on top of that, your team's also not looking particularly good for 29 and you don't want to use the free hit in 29, you might have to wildcard in 27 or 28. And I would say for a lot of us, if your team's in a pretty bad spot right now, you're probably forced into either wildcarding in 27 or 28 or free hitting in 29. Or I suppose the alternative is just taking a shed load of hits, which probably isn't ideal for a lot of people. I certainly don't dislike a wildcard in 27 or 28. I've looked into it in quite a bit of detail, and I think it can work very well, especially if you free hit in 34 and potentially look to use your bench boost therefore in Game Week 37. I will give this more thought across Friday and going towards the deadline. As I said, at the moment, I'm going to try to not use it, but my injuries are really piling up. And it's not just that injuries are piling up because you can just say, we'll just sell the players that are injured. The players that are injured are the players that I want in 29. So Richarlison is rumoured to be injured. He's not been seen in training since the Wolves game. We'll get an update from Postecoglou on the day of you watching this. I'm recording this late on Thursday, but Postecoglou will give us an update. Porro is flagged. Pau Torres is flagged as well. So the players that we actually want for blank Game Week 29 are also flagged, which really isn't an ideal position to be in. So I'm definitely considering it. If I am to wildcard in 27, this is roughly what I would be looking at. Now, this isn't exactly what I'd go in with because I would probably think about it some more and tinker, but there are some common themes. Let me go through those themes. So the first theme is triple Arsenal. And this might seem counterintuitive, given that I've just said I'd like to potentially wildcard in 27 because I might not have enough players for Game Week 29 and I'm not looking to free hit in that week. But Arsenal are just so good. Their assets are so good. And you have to remember, if you're wildcarding in 27, you can't wildcard after the blank game week in 29. So you also have to think about the rest of the season. What do you want your team to look like? And again, they've got Sheffield United this week, Brentford the week after, and then post game week 31, they've got really nice fixtures too. So I just think you are going to want to have 3 Arsenal assets, so why not get them in for their 2 good fixtures now and set yourself up well for the end of the season? And based on everything that we've seen from Arsenal this season, the defence has been slightly better to invest in than the attack. I love Martin Odegaard, and I would definitely be tempted to squeeze him in, but at the moment it is that very safe triple up of Saliba, Gabriel and Saka. So I would have, regardless of your free hit strategy, triple Arsenal, and I think it is worth maybe sacrificing 1 player in 29 to get that triple up. The other thing that I've got, and again, counterintuitive if you're thinking about Game Week 29, is Neto, Senesi, and Solanke. This is, again, without an update on Solanke's fitness, but assuming there's a chance that he's available in 28, I'd have him. As you can see, we've got a bit of a benching headache anyway, so if he misses out in 27, not the end of the world. So I would have triple Bournemouth. The reason that I've gone for Neto rather than someone like Tavernier is due to expected minutes. We know that Neto will play both. But on top of that, it does provide 1 less issue for you in 29, assuming you have another goalkeeper such as Flecken or Areola or Martinez or Vicario, whoever you want to go for. So I like the triple up on Bournemouth, but I like at least having Neto as one of the 3, just because that makes it a little bit easier for me in 29. I do have Doughty in there as well as the only Luton asset, believe it or not. I did think about maybe going for Barkley in midfield or going for a Morris instead of a Watkins. But for me, I just think Doughty's enough, considering that beyond 30, I don't really want to own too many Luton assets. And I just think the double is better for Bournemouth. So this would give me 4 players for double game week 28 that have a double in that week. The other common theme within this is I've had triple Spurs in every single wildcard draft that I've looked at. Son and Maddison have been in every single draft because they are fit and they are fantastic assets when they are fit and available. Obviously, like I said, the rumours going around at the moment, which sadly I don't have confirmation on, is that Richarlison hasn't trained since the Wolves game and therefore is obviously a doubt for Crystal Palace. If he's not, and that's wrong, or that he's training maybe on Friday, then you can go for Richarlison. But I think I would be looking at Udogie in defence. Again, Pedro Porro looks like he's a major doubt for Gameweek 27. If either Porro or Richarlison are fit, they're considerations. But for me, Son, Maddison and Udogie is a really nice triple up from Spurs. And I do think I would have 3 Spurs assets. They've got excellent fixtures. They have obviously a really nice fixture in 29 against Fulham. And then they play against Luton in 30. And beyond that, going in the final stretch of the season, Spurs won't have European football, but they will have a lot to fight for in the league, you'd imagine. So I think having 3 Spurs assets could serve you well, especially as they look like they could have a double game week in 37 involving Burnley as one of the fixtures. So it's a lot of ifs, buts and maybes, but I think triple Spurs will serve you well for the remainder of the season. In and around that, there are some other things here. I've got Flecken for Game Week 29. The other reason I like the Flecken and Neto rotation, by the way, if you're looking for a goalkeeper rotation on a wildcard, Neto's got really nice fixtures up until about 32, 33. And then from 33 onwards, Flecken has arguably the best run out of anyone to end the season. So I almost feel like you play Neto for pretty much every game apart from 29 up to about 32, and then you just switch Flecken in. And that could be a really nice goalkeeper rotation for you. What else is in this team? We've got Bowen and Watkins also have fixtures in 29 and good fixtures over the next 2. Cole Palmer, I think really nice price. Good fixtures outside of the fact that he blanks in 29. And I do have Erling Haaland in here as well. When we look at Game Week 29, the players that I currently have that are blanking are Saliba, Gabriel, Saka, Senesi, Solanke, Palmer, Haaland. So I do have 7 players blanking. The idea here would be that you probably only filled 9 or 10 players, and maybe you do have to take 1 minus 4. But I think it's worth it because what you have to realise with your Game Week 27 wildcard is you could wildcard and get a perfect team out for Game Week 29 with the likes of Douglas Luiz in there and Reguilon and all of these other players. But because you're wildcarding in 27, you don't have a wildcard after that blank game week. So loading up on players that are going to play in Game Week 29 is not going to set you well up for the back end of the season. So you almost do have to either sacrifice 29 a little bit with the wildcard. I do have most of the major bases covered here. You can bring in the likes of Ivan Toney in 29. But I also feel like you don't want to go too far with it and have too many players for 29 where it sacrifices the back end. So I feel like there is a balancing ground here somewhere in the middle. And I feel like this team not only attacks the next few weeks, but also doesn't put you in a terrible position beyond Game Week 29. So that's roughly what I'd be going with on a wildcard in 27. Let me know down below if you are considering it. If you want some more information about chip strategy, there will be a section later on in the video where I have a more in-depth discussion around the best chip strategy in my personal opinion. So guys, I'm currently going off the basis that Hwang is almost definitely out for 27, but again, I don't have an official update on that because I'm recording this on Thursday evening, and I'm also going off the basis that these rumours around Richarlison might be holding some weight, and on top of that, maybe you just have some other issues in your midfield that you'd like to sort. I think a lot of people are looking at making at least 1 midfielder transfer this week, and I know we've just discussed midfielders last week, and a lot of us brought Hwang in, but I thought it would be worth discussing this week if there are any midfielders that I think you should be maybe moving to instead. What you've got in this table here is you've got the player's name that I think, and all of these are good options, by the way. These are my top options. So even if I say slightly negative things about them, I like all of them. You've got the name, the price. You've got their minutes per game over the last 6. I've then got their non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 over the season and over the last 6. And then I've got their fixtures ranking according to Fantasy Football Hub from now until game week 32. If you can see the little arrows, I'm always trying to upgrade my graphics and make them better. And what that arrow basically means is across the last 6 games, has their data improved in comparison to their season numbers, or has it got slightly worse? I.e., are they in good form or bad form according to the data? Hopefully that's helpful to just look at a glance to see which players are performing quite well recently. So I think all of these options are really good. You can see that 4 of the players are highlighted in blue, and then the other players have got that sort of dark grey or black under their name. The reason for that is the players with the blue box around their name, they do not play in Game Week 29. So if you are someone that is free hitting in 29, and you're trying to look at what is an advantage I can get over those that aren't free hitting, i.e. what is one of the benefits of playing the chip, it's that you can bring in the likes of Tavernier, Palmer, Gross and Ødegaard, because those 4 options won't have a fixture in 29, and therefore I couldn't move for any of them right now. I already own Palmer, of course, but would I like to own Pascal Gross for the next 2? Absolutely. Would I like to own Ødegaard this week? Yes. Tavernier, 3 really good fixtures coming up. So if you are looking to get one up and you are looking to free hit in 29, bringing in players that those of us that aren't free hitting can't bring in, it could be a major advantage for you. So I'll quickly discuss those 4 players. Tavernier's data isn't great. I also think that his minutes aren't completely secure, and I would be surprised if he starts the next 3 games against Burnley, Sheffield United and Luton. His performances, ignoring the data even, have not been particularly good for Bournemouth, and Bournemouth do tend to rotate their wingers quite heavily just across the season, but also recently as well. The minutes have been less than secure for most of their wingers. You could even argue that Semenyo, despite not being a midfielder in the game, is probably their most nailed winger at the moment, but I would, again, be shocked if he starts the next 3. That being said, if he gets you 80, 80, 30, he's still going to get more minutes than most other players across that spell. So Tavernier could be a really excellent option if you are looking to free hit in 29. And of course, has the best fixtures of the bunch. Considering how good those next 3 are, you could definitely do worse than him, but don't bring him in my opinion anyway, expecting him to start the next 3. On Cole Palmer, I think he's almost top of the list if you're not looking to free hit in 29, because the fixtures outside of that are exceptionally good. The next couple are pretty good for Cole Palmer, Brentford and Newcastle. Beyond that, beyond Gameweek 29, the fixtures turn for Chelsea. And those of us that are looking to wildcard around 30 or 31 will probably be going for triple Chelsea. I mean it, the fixtures are really, really good. So getting a Cole Palmer in now is probably what I would do if I'm looking to free hit in 29. So really like Cole Palmer as an option. His data recently has dropped off slightly, but generally speaking, he's got pretty consistent data. He's on penalties and his minutes are very good as well. Pascal Gross's fixtures are pretty stinky when you also take into account the fact that, of course, he blanks in 29. But removing that fixture, a bit of a mixed bag for Brighton, but the next 2 are really good. And as you can see, he's got some of the best data in the league over the last 6 for the midfielders that we're considering here. 0.59 non-penalty expected goal involvement. So again, Pascal Gross is a player that I just can't consider because I'm not going to play a free hit in 29. But if you are, he's a player that I'd be looking to bring in. And then, like I said, finally finishing with Ødegaard, if you're not currently on triple Arsenal and maybe you're not completely convinced by a double up on the defence, go for Martin Ødegaard. Sheffield United and Brentford over the next 2. His data, as you can see across the last 6, has shown some signs of improvement, and he's actually 3rd on this list over the last 6 for non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90. So I just wanted to say those are 4 options that you could consider if you're looking to free hit in 29, because I'm trying in these videos to cater to everyone. And although my plan isn't to free hit in 29, I don't want to therefore not give you the content that you deserve. And if you do enjoy that, make sure to drop a like and subscribe as well. Little plug. The rest of the players obviously all have a fixture in Game Week 29. So these are the players, for those of us that either aren't sure whether we want to free hit or not, or are looking to not free hit in 29, we really probably are looking at options that have a fixture. So we've got Barkley, Bailey and Louise from Aston Villa, Bowen, Maddison, and then Son. So 2 players from Villa, 2 players from Spurs, and then Bowen and Barkley. On Barkley's data has just not been good this season. It's just not. Even across the last 6, it's improved, but it's certainly not great. And across the season, it's actually worse than Douglas Luiz, who I constantly slate on this channel. So Barkley, you're really bringing him in for the extra fixture in 28, i.e. having the double game week, and also having a good fixture in 29. But beyond that, he's not really a player that I would want to hold. So for me, the only way that I would consider Barkley is if I was looking at a wildcard in 30 or 31. If you've already used the wildcard, I'm not sure I'd want Barkley because he's just a transfer waiting to happen on the other side. On Bailey versus Louise, I can't believe I'm about to say what I'm about to say. I think Louise could be the one to go for, and I might have been slightly wrong on this. You know what? I was wrong. Obviously, I was wrong based on the fact that he's just been getting returns for fun, but there's also been an improvement in Louise's data. And I am happy on this channel to admit when I'm wrong. And looking at this, if this continues, he's just an exceptionally good option because there's been an improvement from 0.28 non-penalty expected goal involvement per 90 to 0.48. Now, 0.48 isn't mind-blowing, but as you can see, it's actually the 4th best on this list over the last 6. And considering the minutes that he gets, considering he's on set pieces, considering he is a very good finisher, and he's on penalties, I really do like Douglas Luiz as an option. There you go. I said it, and I would be very tempted to bring him in if you're looking for a safe option. As you can see here, though, across the last 6 and across the season, Bailey just has comfortably the best data on this list. The issue that we've got is he also has comfortably the worst minutes per game. Over the last 6, he's got 65 minutes per game. Now, he played, I think, 92 minutes in Game Week 26, but the issue that we've got is I think it's between 27 and 28. Around Game Week 28, the Europa Conference League kicks back in for Aston Villa, and they've got Ajax in the next round. And assuming that that isn't the easiest game for them, which you might think it would be based on Ajax's form in recent months, then maybe this is a game where Bailey has to play it. And let's say in the first leg, Aston Villa don't win it convincingly. I think the second leg is then before blank game week 29, which therefore means that let's say they do struggle in the first leg and Bailey has to play the second leg. Would you be surprised to see Diaby then play the Premier League game against West Ham in game week 29? This was what put me off Bailey last week, but I just don't think his minutes are quite secure enough. Although I do think he'll start more often than not. If it's the sort of thing that you're willing to risk minutes, then I would be willing to go for Bailey. But if you just want safety, based on the recent improvement in his data, I really like Douglas Luiz, and I'm going to stop slating Douglas Luiz here on this channel. That is the last bad thing I'll ever say about him was in previous videos. So I do really like the two Aston Villa assets. Jared Bowen, I would largely ignore this data, right? The last 6, it's really, really quite poor for him. It's down with the likes of Tavernier and Luiz across the season, but Paqueta wasn't playing. And we saw immediately Paqueta comes back into the team. And I don't think he actually directly assisted him for any of the goals, but he just creates space and chances in and around him. And I just think that attack is so much better with Paqueta in the team. So I think you can largely ignore his last 6 data for Bowen. Look at the fact that fixtures are good coming up. His minutes are impeccable. And on top of that, his non-penalty expected goal involvement across the season is also very strong too. So I would consider Bowen one of the very best replacements if you're looking to bring in a midfielder this week that also has a fixture in 29. On James Maddison, it might be a little bit early. I've seen a lot of people asking that question. Is it too early to bring him in? Is he still suffering with an injury? We don't really know. I think he is fit, but is he fully fit? No, probably not. Is there always a chance he re-aggravates his injury? There absolutely is, but it's still a risk I'd probably be willing to take, assuming you don't want Bowen and you can't quite afford Heung-min Son, because I think if you just like Bowen as an option, I probably slightly prefer Bowen to Maddison. I think Son is worth the extra money over Maddison. Again, going off these rumours that we've seen at the moment that Richarlison might not be available in 27, that would mean that Son is not only definitely on penalties, although we probably knew he was anyway, but will also be playing through the middle as the number 9. And we saw at points this season, Sonny as the number 9 is just exceptional as an FPL asset. So I would say that he is up there as one of the very best players you can bring in at the moment, regardless of whatever your chip strategy is. Whether you want a free hit in 29 or not, this week against Palace at home looks like a really good fixture. I think he has a ceiling that not many other players in FPL have. He has that hat-trick potential. He has the ability to go out there and get you a big score. And in consecutive weeks, he can do it as well. So I think to recap all of that, if I were looking to bring in any midfielder this week, it is Heung-min Son. You probably didn't need me to tell you that, but I think he just is the obvious option regardless of strategy. But if you are looking to also bring in a player for 29 and you either already own Son or you want to go slightly different, I would be going either Jared Bowen. I don't mind Maddison, but it would be Jared Bowen, or if you want a cheaper option, I'd probably be looking, believe it or not, at Douglas Luiz. I think is probably the safest option outside that. So I'm going to say Son, Bowen, Luiz, and then Bailey and Maddison, then Barkley. If you are not free hitting in 29, I would say it's probably Son and then Palmer. And this is where strategies start to differ with regards to the transfers that you make, because Palmer has just been so good this season. We need to not forget about that. And with the fixtures that they've got outside of the blank, I think he's a player that's worth bringing in. So hopefully that helped you, that relatively long discussion around the midfielders. For me this week, if I bring in one midfielder, it's Son. If I'm bringing in 2 midfielders, it's probably Son and Bowen. So again, this is something which we've discussed quite a lot recently, and I don't really like repeating content, but you have to update your thoughts every single week, and the same questions do keep coming in. So it's around defenders again, and what I've tried to do again, similarly to what I've just done there, is try to split the defenders into 2 different groups. That first set of 5 defenders is if you are looking to not free hit in 29, i.e. you need the player that you bring in to have a fixture in 29. And then the second group of 5 players at the bottom of the graphic is the 5 players that I would be looking to bring in order of priority if you are free hitting in 29, i.e. if you do not need the player to have a fixture. Obviously, it depends on a variety of other things. Let's say you aren't free in 29, but you've already got like 4 good defenders with fixtures, then maybe you can be a little bit more aggressive with it. It really does depend on your own team, as cliche as that is, and whatever your own strategy is. So, with that being said, I think top of the list for me defensive-wise, if I'm making a defender transfer this week, again, not looking to free it in 29, I think it is Alfie Doughty, simply because of the double in 28 and the pretty good fixture in 29, and because I'm probably looking to wildcard it in 30 or 31 if I don't do it this week. So for me, it just makes sense. Over the next 4 weeks, a defender that has really good attacking threat, pretty good fixtures, although not the best fixture this week against Villa. I just don't see many other defenders that have a much higher clean sheet potential and or the attacking threat to match Doughty. So for me, it would be Doughty. After that, I still think a Villa defender might be the one, you know? But is Pau Torres fully fit? I don't know at the time you're recording this. My prediction is probably not. And is Konsa, we know Konsa's back in training, but is Konsa fit enough to start? Again, I don't know the answer to that. So if there are any doubts around both of them, then you probably can't go there. But if there is one that is confirmed by Emery in the presser to start, then I still think a Villa defender might be worth investing in. After that, I've got Udogie. Again, Porro would probably be on this list as well if we had confirmation that he was available. But Udogie, for a cheaper price, has shown pretty good attacking threat recently. And while Spurs aren't great defensively, you could do a lot worse with the fixtures coming up. In fourth, we've got Reguilon. The fixtures over the next two are pretty terrible against Chelsea and Arsenal, but he has Burnley in game week 29. So Reguilon, if you just need a player for 29, could serve you well. And then I'll finish with a West Ham defender, because despite them not being a very good defence, the fixtures are certainly there. And Emerson has shown, again, along with the likes of Vladimir Sofau, some attacking threat recently. So you could definitely do worse than a West Ham defender. So that's sort of my order of preference if you are looking for a player that plays in 29. If you are not, because you're looking to free hit, I still think Arsenal defence is top of the list. So in first and second, I've got Gabriel and Saliba. And Ben White could even be a decent shout as well for you if you wanted to go there. I just think I would just jump on the Arsenal defence. In third, I've got Senesi. This doesn't have to be Senesi, by the way. It could be any of the other Bournemouth defenders that are relatively nailed for minutes, because Senesi is on 8 bookings. And there is a chance if he gets booked against Burnley and gets booked in the first fixture of Game Week 28, he could miss the second fixture of Game Week 28. But that is a lot of... You'd say it's more likely than not that he won't get booked in the next 2 games. So I would still feel fairly comfortable bringing him in. But if you're looking to own him longer term beyond Game Week 29, maybe it is a slight risk bringing in a player on 8 yellows. Because remember, when he gets 10 yellows, it's a 2-game ban for him. So maybe a slightly riskier pick than what you'd want if you're bringing in a defender at the moment. In fourth, I actually have Andrew Robertson, believe it or not. And this could be Van Dijk if you wanted to go there for safety of minutes. But the reason I like this is, again, it's a player that me, looking to not free hit 29, I just can't even look at Liverpool players. But they've got Forest this week, which is a pretty decent fixture. And then after Game Week 29, the fixtures are exceptionally strong for Liverpool. And I think most people are going to want to own at least 2, if not 3 Liverpool assets for the back end of the season. So bringing in one now could be a really nice transfer. And then in fifth, I still have Doughty. He's the only player to feature on both, just simply because he obviously plays in 29, but he also has the double in 28. So it feels like you're being slightly aggressive bringing him in now, but you're also covering yourself for the blank. So that's the reason he's on the graphic, because I think he's a player that sort of suits both strategies. So there we go. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Again, if I'm looking to make a defender transfer this week, it's probably Doughty. If not Doughty, I am looking at possibly Reguilon. And if I want to get really aggressive with it, I could bring in a Bournemouth defender. But I think I'm more likely to bring in Neto in goal so that it doesn't give me an extra player blanking in Game Week 29. So I'm very aware that I've spoken about chip strategy a hell of a lot recently, as have other content creators. So if you're just sick and tired of chip strategy, you can simply skip this section. I will not be offended at all, I promise, and just move on to the rest of the video. But I'm still getting a hell of a lot of questions around chip strategy, not only just about what I think is the best strat or what do you think of this one, but also maybe if you don't have one of the major chips of wildcard free hit bench boost, should you change your strategy based on that? So I thought I would cover my 4 favorite strategies as things stand if you have all 3 chips. And then I thought I would also cover roughly what I'll be planning without obviously being able to see your team if you don't have one of the major chips. So I still think my plan probably at the moment is strategy 1, which is to wildcard after blank Game Week 29, probably in Game Week 31, just based on the fact that the team that I put out in 29 actually have good fixtures in 30. So I'm probably looking at Game Week 31 wildcard, free hit in 34, and bench boost in 37. Those are interchangeable, but based on the projected doubles in 34 and 37, I think a bench boost probably suits 37 better, and I would imagine that a free hit probably suits 34 better. Because the teams that double in 34, I don't really want to own longer term, and some of the players that I do want to own longer term, for example, Spurs, could potentially be blanking in 34, and therefore I think it just makes sense for me to set up a team that I really like for the back end that can bench boost in 37 and just free hit to deal with that Game Week 34. So I really like strategy 1, and at the moment I'm like 60% likely to follow that. Strategies 2 and 3 are what I would be going for if I decide to wildcard this week, which, like I said, is probably sat at like 20 to 30% likelihood at the moment. So both of them, wildcard 27 or 28, that could be. In strategy 2, you would then either free hit in 29 or 34, based on how you want to set up the wildcard, and then bench boost in 37. I think there is definitely value to wildcard 27, free hit 29, but when I look at it, The team that I would set up on a wildcard in 27 doesn't differ too much if I free hit in 29 or not. And therefore, I feel like, well, I might as well just save it for 34. So I think for me, I would edge towards wildcard 27, free hit 34, bench boost 37. So it's essentially identical to strategy 1. I'm simply just moving the wildcard forward by about 4 weeks. Strategy 3 is very similar to strategy 2, but rather than bench boost in 37, you actually bench boost in 28. So it would be wildcard 27, bench boost 28. And I think if you bench boost 28, you probably would have to free hit in 29. So what you'd be looking at there is basically spunking your chips in across the next 3 weeks. Wildcard, bench boost, free hit in the next 3. That leaves you with no chips post game week 30. But you might have gained so many points in those 3 that you can hang on. And of course, you would have played your wildcard. So your team's not going to be set up awfully. But I think that's maybe a bit overly aggressive for me. And then the final strategy is the only one I'm considering that involves a free hit 29. If I choose to free hit in 29 and it's not wildcard 27, i.e. strategy 2, I think I'd save my wildcard until game week 35. Because if I'm free hitting in 29, I can start to bring in players that have good fixtures after game week 29. So this week I could bring in Liverpool players or Arsenal players. And therefore, I don't think I would need the wildcard in 30 or 31. So what I would probably do is free hit 29, dead end into that blank and double game week 34. So get out the best possible team I can in 34, wildcard out of that in 35, and then bench boost in 37. This is obviously a very nice strategy because it means that your bench boost is likely to be much better because you're wildcarding only a couple of weeks before it. So I like that fourth strategy, and it's probably the one I would go for, like I said, if I just decide that I need to free hit in 29. If you don't have one of these chips, it still depends on your team. Like, I'm going to give some rough advice, but it really does depend. If you don't have your bench boost, the only major piece of advice that I would give to you is don't wildcard in 35. Because I feel like the only real benefit of wildcard 35 is to set up for that bench boost in 37. Otherwise, like, why are you waiting to wildcard that late? You're not really gaining as much. I would probably be looking to wildcard no later than 33. But if you don't have your bench boost, I'd just be looking at something like wildcard 31, free hit 34. So strategy 1 minus the bench boost, or basically strategy 2 minus the bench boost. So wildcard 27 and then free hit in either 29 or 34. So that's what I'd be going with. Bench boost is relatively straightforward. If you don't have your free hit, this obviously makes it a bit tricky because the free hit is such a valuable chip to get you out of jail. But what I would be looking at if you don't have a free hit is probably wildcarding a little bit later than now. And the reason I say that is we'll just have a bit more information a bit later on in the season. And you'll also have a much better idea about which players you want to own for the back end of the season to cover you for both game week 34 and 37. So if I didn't have the free hit, I think I'll be looking at something like wildcard 31, bench boost 37. But once again, this is so team dependent. If you need a wildcard now, you'll have to play it now. But I just think without the free hit, I would like to wait a few more weeks, get through game week 29 if possible, and look to wildcard when you come out the back end of that blank game week in 29. So that would be my slight preference, but again, once again, and I will keep saying it, it is completely dependent on what your team and the players that you currently own look like. Finally, if you don't have your wild card, I would say this is probably the trickiest position to be in, unless you've just wildcarded and your team's looking pretty good anyway. But maybe if you wildcard in like 21 or something like that, you might be struggling a little bit. I would probably say that you just look to free hit in either 29 or 34. Based on how your team looks now. If you feel like you really need the free hit in 29, play it in 29. And if you don't feel like you need it now, let's say you've got 6 or 7 players, you can bring in a couple more and field like 8 or 9, that's absolutely fine. Then probably play the free hit in 34 and then look to bench boost in 37. I think it's still relatively straightforward. It would depend again on the players that you own as to whether you decide to use your free hit in 29 or 34. If you've only got like one of them, i.e. you don't have the bench boost, but you have a wildcard or a free hit, it's the same, just remove bench boost 37, I think. There is the temptation, if you don't have the bench boost, to free hit in 37, because it's likely to be the biggest double game week of the season, and I certainly don't mind that either. As you can imagine, it's very difficult for me to talk about all of the possible strategies and all of the permutations, again, without seeing your team. You need to just sit down and look at the players that you own, look at how many you have for 29, look at what your team looks like from 30 and 31 moving forward, and once you've done all of that, hopefully there will be a strategy which sticks out as being slightly better for your own team. If you have your own chip strategy right now and you know what you're looking to do for the future, let me know what that is down below in the comments. So guys, I thought I would briefly finish with what my current plans are for my team, and sadly I don't yet know because I'm just suffering with quite a few flag plans, and it's one of the reasons that I am slightly considering that wildcard 27 that I showed you at the start of the video. So I'm really just going to wait for all of the press conferences on Friday and hopefully get some good news. The latest that we currently have, as far as I'm aware, again, this is on Thursday evening at 11 p.m. to timestamp it, is Hwang looks very, very unlikely to feature in 27. Pedro Porro still hasn't been in full team training, at least as of Thursday. Pau Torres, we don't yet know, but it's not looking particularly great for him, at least for 27. And there are rumours going around that Richarlison hasn't been in full team training since their game against Wolves. So if we go on the basis, which would be kind of worst case scenario for me, that Hwang, Richarlison, Porro and Pau are all out for 27, if I also have Solanke out, then I am looking at a -4 just to field 11 players, and that would include the likes of Charlie Taylor. So it's not particularly great, but that wouldn't in and of itself force me to wildcard. What would force me to wildcard is if Richarlison, Porro and Pau are injured, but 2 of them, or maybe 3, are confirmed as being out for 29 as well. Let's say we get news that Porro's injury is really bad and Richarlison's done some serious damage to whatever he's injured, if he has, then that would probably force me to wildcard, because what I'm looking at then is, or maybe free hit in 29, I suppose, but I'm losing 2 of my 6 players that actually have a fixture in 29, and I'm having to take a hit this week for the likes of Hwang as well. And that's assuming that the likes of Charlie Taylor is actually going to be fine for 29 by the... It's starting to get super messy at that point. And I feel like I'm going to have to take multiple hits, and I'm also not going to have a particularly good team for 29. And again, I could free hit instead, but I look at it and I think if I'm having to take hits this week to field a decent 11, I don't have a lot of the players that I would want to own. My team's not looking particularly great for double game week 28. Maybe I do just decide to wildcard this week. So that's what would be required for me to wildcard. I think if I was to predict what's happening at the moment, let's go on the basis that Pau and Pedro Porro are doubts. Let's say Richarlison is injured. Let's say Hwang's injured. And let's say the Solanke has a chance of playing, because the latest news is that it's probably not as serious as we first thought. But again, we'll find that out in the Friday pressers. Let's say that I have a chance I have Solanke. I really only need to make 1 transfer this week, which is that Hwang position, right? If I remove Hwang and Solanke plays, I don't have a bench, but I would have 11. Again, it would include Charlie Taylor and Ake, who I don't really want to play this week. But I could 4-3 field 11. So I think at the moment, the very basic plan is hope that my team's not in a terrible position and just do Hwang to Son. If Solanke is confirmed as being out, and or Richarlison confirmed as being out on top of that, and I feel like I need to make another attacking transfer, it probably would be Richarlison out, unless he's got a chance of playing in 29, and it would be probably Jared Bowen in. Because I'm not actually losing a player in 29 there, because Bowen's also got a fixture. The other possibility that I have is if Solanke's out, I could replace Solanke, and that would be with Tony instead. So I think the almost definite attacking transfer that I make will be Hwang to Son. And then the other one that I could make is either Richarlison to Bowen or Solanke to Tony. The only other option that I could do if I don't make any of those transfers is a defender transfer. And as I said, it's probably Doughty that I'm looking at bringing in. But I don't think I would do that for Porro or Pau, unless, again, they are confirmed as being out in 29. It would probably actually be, which doesn't make my team any stronger for this week, but obviously does give me an extra player for 29, is Doughty in for Ake. So that's a possibility for a -4. But I just think, is Doughty going to outscore Ake by 4 points this week? Probably not. I wouldn't really expect so. And again, if Porro's out, then that's probably a move that I do want to make, is just Porro to Doughty. So I'm sorry that it's so messy at the moment. It's really not the way that I like to make these videos, but I'm waiting on injury information, which is sadly the case sometimes. And also, just FPL isn't an easy game at all. So that's the rough plan at the moment. I do think Son's likely to be the one that comes in. I will just pose a question to you guys, because I was discussing this with FPL Pickle, i.e. Mrs. Raptor, and she was saying that she thinks... Where is Jared Allman, defenders? She was saying that she thinks actually maybe Jared Bowen could be better for the next 2 and then look to bring in Son in 29. So let's assume that I'm going to own Son and Bowen for 29. Would you rather bring Bowen in for the next 2 and then Son in 29, or Son for the next 2 and then Bowen in 29? So Bowen's probably got the better fixtures on paper against Everton and Burnley, but I kind of like Son's for him, right? He's got Crystal Palace at home and Villa away. So it's just basically, I bring in one now and I bring in the other one a bit later is probably the most likely, again, unless Richarlison is confirmed as being out for a long time. Hopefully that's not too confusing. Again, lots of rumours, flags, information that we're waiting for. But hopefully that's helped you to ease your mind about a few of your key decisions. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 27 deadline decisions video. Hopefully it was helpful, and if it was, please do smash that like button. And if you've watched to this part and you're not yet subscribed, please do subscribe as well. I do really appreciate it. Until next time, thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.